Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's webinar. Today, we're going to talk about pest management in the Western Slope. And if you are here, it's either because you're interested and live over there in the Western Slope, or you might live like me in the Front Range, but are very interested about integrated pest management. So either way, we're glad that you're here. As a reminder, CSU Extension is an equal opportunity provider. So if you want to learn more about ways that we can help or anything related to accommodations, please take a picture of the QR code or visit our website to learn more about that. These are, as a reminder, housekeeping details about these webinars. These webinars is being recorded and we will post it on the plantalk.org/webinars website. We not only post past webinars, but you can also register for the upcoming ones that we have for the month of May. Today, we will use the Q&A feature for questions, so feel free to type your questions in there and we will do our best to answer them. As I just mentioned, please register for the upcoming webinars on this series. And we're halfway through our series. Next week, we'll talk about vegetable diseases and pests, but we have only 4 more. So it has gone very fast. And hopefully you have attended other ones, or if this is your first time, welcome as well to be. Thank you for being here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start. And as I mentioned, we'll talk about integrated pest management in the Western Slope. Lisa Mason and myself, Mario Ortiz Castro, we are part of these as a facilitators and will help you answering any questions. Our speaker today is Melissa Schreiner, and she's a CSU entomologist in the Dry River area. But I want to say that Mel is not only an entomologist, she's also an artist. She illustrates, and I have only seen the insects that she has done, but she's wonderful about it. So she might show you some of her illustrations today. And you could say that Mel, Lisa, and I are the new faces of pest management in Extension. We went to grad school together, but we didn't know each other. So we are all CSU grads, and we from the Department of Ag Bio. I was in plant pathology, and Lisa and Mel were in entomology. So you could say we're the new faces, but we're just really learning together and probably helping everybody to disseminate information about integrated pest management. Mel is also, I'm going to say, she just received an award on Early Career Excellence for Extension Education. So she's an awesome educator, and thank you, Mel, for being here today and talking to us about this important topic in the Western Slope.
Thank you, Mari. I'll share my presentation and get started here. Okay. You stop me if you can't see my slides, Mari. But I've titled my talk today, CSU Extension in Action, Entomology in Western Colorado. So it's a privilege of mine to be with you all today. Thank you for joining to hear about what's happening on our end of the state. I'm located out here in Grand Junction. It's our largest industrial and medical urban area of Western Colorado. And it's been urbanizing slowly, and I work with our historical agricultural communities out here on this side of the state. So you're always welcome to contact me, and I work as the extension entomologist for the Tri-River area, so it's over 4 counties, and I'm also a PhD student within agricultural biology, and so feel free to reach out. I started my introduction into farming about when I was in high school. So I didn't grow up on a farm. I was fascinated by horticultural production. And I got started with a youth farming program. It was a nonprofit called the Cultiva Youth Project. And it introduced job skills to participants. And it additionally, it gave opportunities to work with a farmer's market stand and to work on in a vegetable production operation. So it was really how I got introduced to this this path within Extension. So I now work for CSU Extension. I went to Colorado State University after high school and studied soil sciences and Now I work for Extension as an entomologist. So I got the bug from Whitney Cranshaw. I took one of his classes and went on to work for him for about 4.5 years. And I've now been with Extension for 4 years. And I run quite a diverse program. So I'm mainly trained as an agricultural extension entomologist. I worked under Whitney, who is our state extension entomologist, for about over 35 years. And he focused in agricultural systems, mainly in horticulture. So I'm working, more broadly with row crops and with tree fruit systems out here in Western Colorado. We have our famous Olathe sweet corn and the Palisade peach. Um, I also support residential inquiries. Our Master Gardener program, we run a diagnostic help desk, one of the few remaining in the state that sees the volume. It's an incredible volume of requests on help us identify this weed, help us identify this insect that we have. Why is my plant dying? But my main job is to work with commercial businesses to help solve issues relating to insects or arachnids or their allies. So I work some on public health issues, pretty minimally. So I do identify things like ectoparasites that come into our office through our diagnostic help desk. So any types of submissids, bed bugs, bat bugs, swallow bugs, poultry bugs. Kissing bugs occasionally come in based on the area. I live out here in Mesa County, and we do have kissing bugs, Triatroma protracta. It's the western cone nose. It's very specific to our area out here. It lives on pack rats, and then when pack rats die, they end up invading homes and they look for a human blood meal. So things stay interesting around here, whether insects are from the region or they're coming in on the, nursery industry, for example, or on turf grass. We respond also to invasive species coming into the area. Just for a visual representation, I work out here in the western region. So this mustard colored strip, I've highlighted the 4 counties that I cover. I do work out of one of the busiest offices, if not the busiest office in the state of Colorado. We see about a third of all calls in the state out of the Grand Junction office. I think our relationship with rural Coloradoans goes very far back. We've got one of the stronger 4-H programs. We've got, huge county fair. A lot of folks know about Extension and have relied on Extension services in our region for a long time. Not to say that that's not the case for urban areas. It's just that in rural areas, folks they do have a need to be self-reliant and to have services like Extension that allow folks to do so and to thrive. It goes way back. So folks know about us, and they I always say people are coming out of the woodworking this time of year, and so are the bugs. So it's just part of it. It's lovely to work in an area where we have so many diverse crops grown. So field corn and alfalfa is major crops produced in our region. Historically, in my county, we had more sweet corn. Now it's more down just in the Uncompahgre Valley, which I still work out of those counties, Delta and Montrose, just to the south of us. But we even have, I'd say significant acreage of stone fruit production. So this perennial tree fruit horticultural cropping systems that allow for us to grow cherries and plums and peaches. We have a wine grape industry that's, annually multi-million-dollar industry. So are peaches alone in the valley. So it's a big deal. Folks have multi-generational farms out here. It's a lovely place to call home. We have small acreage scattered throughout this area that is urbanizing. So we are seeing more either, land sell to solar or to be divided up into subdivisions. And it's in an interesting state of change out here in the Grand Valley where I live. Here's a photo of that. There's Mount Garfield off to the side of it anyway. But it's a challenging climate to grow food. All of Colorado could probably be lumped into that statement, but yet we all, we persevere. We love what we do. We enjoy the challenge, I suppose, is a good way of thinking about it. The Tri-River area, so that area I highlighted of those 4 counties, so it's Mesa, Delta, Montrose, and Ouray County. You may be familiar with Ouray, Colorado. You may be familiar with Palisade, maybe Paonia, Hotchkiss area. Some of these areas you may have never been to, and you should get on that. You should come out and take a visit. There's wonderful growing regions tucked within the high desert out here. Up where I'm at in the Loma and Fruta and Grand Junction area, we have, that's the Grand Valley, and Palisade sits on, the mouth of that DeBeck Canyon, and really warm winds come in through DeBeck Canyon, and all the tree fruits planted right there in Palisade because they are those private properties are the recipients of that warm wind that is all winter long, keeping those perennial trees alive, fighting the frost that we have up on this northern latitude up in Colorado. It's impressive that at this elevation we can grow tree fruit, and it's often forgotten that it's because of the $1 million winds is what everyone calls them out here. And it's why on that end of the valley where Palisade is circled, that's where we have almost all the tree fruit produced in that area. But up in Cedar Ridge and Orchard City, you can see I've circled as well. And Hotchkiss and Paonia, we also have fruit growing regions. So there's quite a few to check out if you're really into wines. I can't recommend enough coming to taste some of the wine up in the Hotchkiss and Paonia areas. Palisade, you can't leave them out either. There's a wonderful industry of tourism here, tucked within the desert and mountains out here in Western Colorado. So my program within Western Colorado, I really focus to support staff. I work out of area often to support staff in the Western region, as I just work in 4 counties, but we sometimes have some weird arthropods that visit the extension offices. So I do support folks in the identification of these challenging requests for identification. So whether they're insects or arachnids, one of my favorite parts about my job is that folks send me bug photos, as they often call it. But photos of arthropods, they're wonderful animals I'm lucky I have such a visual brain. I really enjoy this aspect of my job. Not always are photos high quality. So when you're taking photos, especially for ID, try to get multiple and clear photos when you're sharing those for ID with experts. But I also look at damaged plants. We're able to tell a lot about a pest when there's evidence left behind, whether that's chewing evidence, they've been munching on a plant, or they've been leaving their excrement behind, or evidence of their dwellings. There's information. I consider myself, I was a child that loved Harriet the Spy. In ways, I like to think about what I get to do in a way as I do solve a lot of problems, and I'm not a detective. I'm not as cool as that, but I like to think about the ways that I can use evidence of, characteristic evidence of certain insect behavior or feeding damage or biology, and I'm able to help answer questions for producers or for homeowners or commercial businesses. My passion is sharing about entomology with the world. I think that this group of animals that makes up such a large percentage of the animal kingdom, I mean, invertebrates make up 70% of the animal kingdom. So that's not a chunk of pie that we can just call disgusting and ignore. And I think there really should be a lot of emphasis on the world of arthropods and all that they do to influence the cycles on Earth and all the ways that we benefit from them. But I share this with youth learners. I share this with adult learners all across the state. One of the biggest projects I'm a part of, sorry, I just stamped a bunch of labels in here. This was kind of a last minute slide, but I wanted to represent my biggest educational event every year. It's the Western Colorado Pest Management Workshop that I partner with the Department of Agriculture on. So we do a fair amount of programs for adults. This is for pesticide applicators that are licensed within the state of Colorado, so folks know how to, they stay in touch with relevant and needed information that they need to retain that license by attending a workshop that we put on. I host over 20 speakers for this multi-day event. I bring folks from main campus and from other states out to speak on pest management related issues. So we have a huge event. Every year we have hundreds of people attend. We're now getting good sponsorship going into this event from the ag industry. But this is helping, this one example of a program that we run for Western Colorado. As Mari mentioned, which was so kind, I love illustration and art, and fusing that with science. So that's my biggest joy and challenge in life. But I love to make illustrations that help folks digest complicated scientific information. So whether insects are easy to illustrate. They're colorful. They're fun to label. But it goes farther than that. My love of art goes way back in my life. My first drawings are of the garden. My mom just recently scanned this photo of a drawing from second grade where I'm drawing praying mantids and flying coccinellids and tunneling ants. Um, but it's something that, it's a lifelong love. And now I'm trying to incorporate it into the work that I do. So by telling the stories of insects with these bright illustrations, I hope to make the unfamiliar more relatable. These complicated processes become more understandable. I'll tell you a little story here. This is a parasitoid wasp, and this female wasp will insert her eggs into horntail caterpillars that are munching, let's say, on your tomatoes. This is the tobacco hornworm. I'm just visually representing those eggs being inserted into that caterpillar. And then that caterpillar is going to cease to exist, and there's going to be a bunch of baby wasps that come out. And so these stories I can illustrate, I feel the best when I use visual art, and it's been a joy to learn how to do this for programming. Here's just an example of showing different orthopterans, are straight wing insects, so the grasshoppers, katydids, and crickets. But we're licensing these. This license has been formed, and we're still formalizing the garden notes that are going to have new illustrations embedded within them. So there's a lot of interesting things to do with art. I think by licensing them with the university, it's been wonderful to be able to use them for work. And then these illustrations I'm able to use if I choose to make a children's book or a field guide. And so working with the Master Gardener program is a priority of mine. So donating this work for their use has been, it's been a privilege to work with them. My program does a lot of crop scouting and site visits. So we are visiting with farms to help solve some of these pest management related issues we're going to be diving into today. A lot of this, we involve research in some of these sites that we're visiting, but we can be randomly approached by private properties or by businesses, and they can request that we help to identify a pest or locate where there's damage, we can teach folks how to scout for pests or how to monitor for insects that are damaging their livelihood. So we do this in several different systems, whether folks are growing plants for seed production or for a crop to bring to market. We're working with a variety of folks on these tasks. I get to foster a lot of mentorship opportunities in my program. I work with wonderful people. I've been, heavily investing time in mentorship as, entomology is unfortunately a science that's, I hate to use the phrasing, but it is kind of dying off. We need folks investing time in creating more entomologists. So I work with the CSU Extension internship program on pest management related projects. On the left side here, we have Trinity Wells, who worked on an apple netting project up at one of our research stations. And then in the center here, we have Melissa Franklin. She's worked 25 years for CSU Extension. She deserves a round of applause for all she does for pest management in Western Colorado. She's pictured here with one of the largest peaches ever grown in Palisades. She's a local star. She was invited out to this peach weighing event. She had the inside knowledge on this was happening. They had picked the biggest peach in Palisade several years ago. But I work with multiple technicians. Melissa Franklin, as I've just mentioned, she runs our research projects heavily. So I've been able to bring someone in to work on insect monitoring programs. And more recently, we've hired another technician, Lakin, who's working with our Western Colorado insect collection. So it's wonderful to have somewhat of a lab that I'm putting together and working with folks in this mentorship space. But because I work with these wonderful individuals, I'm able to run an applied research program in addition to the education that I do with CSU Extension. So I work within sweet corn to do projects with our specialty crop block program with the Department of Agriculture. We have worked heavily with local government on the Japanese beetle work we covered last week. I'll have a little bit on that today to cover as well. We participate in the CAPS project, which I'll be going through shortly. And yeah, private industry insecticide trials, we sometimes will look at products that are being tested, and that helps to fund our programming. So we do couple with the Agricultural Experiment Station Network. The Western Colorado Research Centers is who we work with the most. The three you see located in Western Colorado, the Grand Valley, Orchard Mesa, and Rogers Mesa stations. I have projects ongoing at two of these this year, I believe. Historically, I've done all three. But working within this research station network and with the wonderful collaborators, it helps us get a lot of questions answered for stakeholders in Colorado. So like Rogers Mesa, they have a historic apple orchard there. We're working on an apple netting project there. The Grand Valley, it's not really where sweet corn is grown anymore, but we have historically run a sweet corn project there on behalf of the Uncompahgre Valley to the south of us. So we've been able to partner and conquer different really challenging insect pests because we've been working with our partners at AES. My program, we hire Melissa Franklin full-time in the summer to monitor for pests that should never show up really in the US or in Colorado. And this is through the Cooperative Agricultural Pest Survey. So we work with private property owners that are working to grow these particular plants, so wine grapes and peaches and cherries and plums, and we evaluate with we basically passively trap those areas, making sure that nothing shows up that shouldn't be interacting with those crops. So we're really the first detectors of some of this invasive biology. So Melissa Franklin has over 600 traps out she plans to set out this year. 500 is a common average number that she sets out in all of these orchards. She knows dozens of growers. She's worked for Extension for 25 years, so retaining Melissa Franklin throughout all these years is an incredible rarity and, a wonderful thing for pest management and for Coloradoans like yourselves. Someone like this that has dedicated their lives to looking for something that shouldn't be there, and she'd be the one to find it if it showed up. It goes a long way for protecting our agricultural economy. So CAPS, this is the project that she works on. It's a USDA funded project. We hope this funding continues. As of this year, they have signed a cooperative agreement with us through our Department of Agriculture. So we're thankful to be conducting these surveys this year. But this is a national network. So folks all over the nation are looking for things that should never show up. And if they do, we alert this network through this pest detection network that we're a part of. So wine grapes is a wonderful thing. Wine and the production of grapes, there's plenty of issues like diseases, especially we're monitoring for on these surveys. So we go even outside of our focal point of looking for insect pests on this survey. We're even looking for diseases in wine grapes as well that should really only exist in Europe. I mean, if we were to see an entire vineyard, showing symptoms that we've been trained to detect, we would work with a lab to confirm what that disease might be. So our wine grape survey, this is several of the pests that we do look for that are insects. So we look for the European grapevine moth. We don't want that showing up here. The Christmas berry webworm, grape phylloxera, this is here, but we detect that. We look for it commonly. It's a part of our survey. And then, the spotted lanternfly is a really big one. We don't want this to move out from the East Coast and end up in Colorado. So we look for this on a regular basis. Melissa Franklin also is in apples and plums and peaches and apricots and cherries, many of our pome and stone fruits, also looking for things that really should never show up. So cherries and apricots, peaches and plums. Won't read through all of these, but we've got a dozen or so. I only stapled a few of these in here as examples, but we build documents on how and what we're looking for, and we have official experts that help confirm things if we find something that looks similar in our traps. I am a generally trained entomologist. I can identify only so much. Sometimes we approach the specialists as I'm trained more as a generalist. So we're spending, we're just about to spend a lot of time out here in our beautiful orchards in Western Colorado and grape vineyards. I know for us, it's a lovely part of what we get to do is interacting with the people that put food in the farmers markets and in our grocery stores. It's a lovely job working with farmers. Insect detection, it goes a long way. Even when, you find something that you've already beaten in the past. So the Japanese beetle was detected through the Department of Agriculture in 2022 after it had been beat about, in '09. We covered this heavily in a workshop already, so I don't plan to go too heavily into this, but this is a major pest management project that we've basically collaborated on and have helped build out a project team for over the last several years. So there is a lot of fear of the Japanese beetle entering our wine, grape, and stone fruit production. It's currently located, this is a zoomed in snippet. It's a heat map showing the hottest colors, where we have the most beetles detected in urban Grand Junction. So not in our growing region of the valley. So they have not moved within our growing region. We have data to support that. They are within the urban area, hanging out on irrigated turf grass. So industry is concerned about that movement into their pest district. They have a historical district founded in the mid 1900s, to protect their tree fruit. They don't want one more thing to worry about, which is the Japanese beetle. And they've encouraged their county partners to do something about it over the last several years, as an attempt to stop this biology from becoming a permanent problem, which it may do regardless of efforts. But a tremendous effort has been made in Mesa County to work to eradicate the Japanese beetle, so to delete this biology from the landscape, which it's easier said than done. But invasive species cause a lot of harm when they're moved to new areas. So the movement of plant material into the Grand Valley, unfortunately, likely through sod grass, we will never know for sure. But with new neighborhoods coming in and the need for turf grass to be put into every yard, unfortunately, it's a very common thing. Not all turf's bad. It protects our trees. I think some acreage of turf over a certain number of acreage, it becomes an issue. Having so much of a plant grown in the high desert, it may not make sense based on its water demands. But invasive species like the Japanese beetle, their populations can explode when there's nothing in place to kill them. So the weather here doesn't take care of them. There's not any natural enemies, and they just explode across the landscape very rapidly. The Japanese beetle eats a dozen or so plants very commonly, but it's documented on hundreds of plants. It's polyphagous. It feeds on many plants, polyphagous. Hollyhocks, roses, lindens, Virginia creeper. These are huge plants. A lot of our crop plants as well. But initially, the Japanese beetle was detected pretty much just in one, and it still is. It's pretty much in one area of Grand Junction, where new subdivisions were put in along the interstate corridor right there. You can see it's in between. We've got beetle traps. You can see there. It's kind of a poor map. This is one of the very first ones we made in 2022 with our GIS department. I don't want to call their maps poor. They just have made them so much more interesting over the years as they've worked on this project. They've made things a little easier to look at too. So these little dots you see, the ones that are dark, show that there was Japanese beetles caught in those traps. So it's over about a 4-mile area that we did catch beetles initially. The use of traps in our area is recommended because we're using that data. So traps are being run by the Department of Agriculture and by my program within CSU Extension to determine where there are beetles located, because we don't have millions of beetles in the environment. We know they're isolated to a few areas of the valley. We've used traps as a tool. I want to reiterate, if you're on the Front Range, traps are not recommended for use. You have permanent, established, forever likely populations of Japanese beetles, and you're just going to draw those beetles to that's pretty much how it's working here in Grand Junction. You're drawing the beetles to your property. So we've been very lucky that we've had folks realize that data is valuable to report. So people have placed traps in Grand Junction and reported data. over several years' time. We train those citizen scientists. Many folks have stepped up to the plate to help with looking for the Japanese beetle on their own private property. And we ran a project the last several years to train citizens of the county that are very interested in helping detect where there are and are not Japanese beetles flying around. So we've worked heavily with community members to quickly respond and get data so that we can feed all of that into a map. So initially, I've told you in Grand Junction, there's one area about 4 miles wide. And in GIS, we've gone in here and we've shown about where the Department of Agriculture is placing their traps. It's just in this area where we know there's beetles. They want to know exactly the properties that they need to be worried about. We additionally, I'm showing you a different map now. The blue is where all of the Department of Agriculture traps are, mainly all centered in that one area. And then all of the green traps you see are traps that my program ran with citizen scientists. So we were able to cover, I mean, we're covering massive acreage with traps. I mean, there's hundreds of traps going out. Like right here, there's over, 550 traps you're looking at layered on top of each other there in the center. But you can see I've circled in 3 areas where there's additional movement of blue traps to those areas. And that's because initially one of my green traps caught beetles in a new area. And then the Department of Agriculture in blue were able to come in and put additional traps out to learn more about the population of beetles in these areas, which have luckily been very few beetles have been caught out of this main area of Grand Junction. So they really are primarily coming from one region and several subdivisions. Just want to thank all of our partners, Mesa County and WD Yards, who are doing what they can to get rid of the Japanese beetle in this valley before it moves into the agricultural space. Department of Agriculture is helping the county. They're really a side-by-side partner, making sure that they provide the county with data from the traps that they're managing so that I should say, really the county is able to make informed decisions about what to do with that private property that has an invasive species on it, as they've deemed it a nuisance pest at the county level, which was legislation that was passed shortly after I began this project. So industry growers of wine grapes and tree fruit, they wanted their county board of county commissioners to try to stop the Japanese beetle from spreading to their area. So the county has started this big spray program. So extension supports in terms of education. We help identify potential Japanese beetle grubs that are found in lawns across the valley. This is a major program of ours. But the city of Grand Junction is working to treat their parks. I mean, school districts are involved, churches are involved. It's pretty powerful. The local fruit societies and the nonprofits are involved. Local nurseries are doing all what they can to educate the public about the spread, like preventing plant material from moving around, because that's how we spread Japanese beetles. But it's been one of the largest efforts this valley has seen in terms of pest management. So just a friendly reminder, don't move, grandma's geraniums from one county to another, or even within the county. If you can help it, don't share plants unless you're going to treat them. It's totally fine to share, but if you're going to move sod grass over the Continental Divide as well, it really should it should be that you're confirming that that's going to be treated beforehand. This is a regulated process within the state, but we all can do our due diligence to make sure we're upkeeping sanitation so that we don't spread pests where we don't want them. I do want to end my talk today by talking about another really big project of ours, which is, it's an ugly beast. This is a caterpillar you're looking at. This is the corn earworm, and it's our primary pest here in sweet corn production. So many of you may get excited to eat Olathe sweet corn come the 4th of July. I'm a little girl of the state. I grew up eating Olathe sweet corn, and now I'm working closely with the growers that are packing it out and are struggling to sell corn because this caterpillar gets within the ears. It's not killing the plants of corn, but this caterpillar's presence it's an ugly worm to open up an ear of corn to. No one wants to be greeted by a corn earworm. And so distributors are they're buying less corn, and it's made it really challenging for growers in our area to justify keeping this industry going. Because they can't meet grade, they can't sell their corn, because the distributor says, well, there's just too many corn earworms in that corn. So we're working as a big group to help solve some of the issues around this pest, and we've discovered some really ugly things about it. One thing is new genetics. It has unfortunately gotten from a very similar species. We've discovered some of, the very few options of insecticides that are available. So there's, often a few insecticides are relied upon heavily, and that has led to pyrethroid resistance. So we've overused some products. But just working heavily with fresh market sweet corn growers to provide education on IPM, and working with my PhD advisor, Dr. Mickey Eubanks, which is he's in the agricultural biology department. He's an insect ecologist. We're forming projects, and we're doing field trials this year to continue to look at how we can maybe bring back the efficacy of pyrethroids with synergists. We're not sure how that's going to pan out, but I want to introduce this pest. It's an ugly caterpillar for sure. Not in just how it looks. I actually think they're quite beautiful, on the contrary, but they're ugly in what they do to corn. As you can see here, they're damaging that beautiful developing kernel. But they're a major worldwide pest. So they have multiple generations per year. That makes them very hard once your corn is standing, they're going to continue to infest it. And it, of course, just to make things more complicated, it has hybridized with a similar species, making it even more of a super pest. So this is the adult. This is the corn earworm. They're pretty, moderate, average looking moth, brown, four wings. They've got some different colors on those back wings. They're nocturnal. A lot of moths are known for being so. They're hiding in corn foliage during the day often, but they're polyphagous, just like the Japanese beetle is. They feed on a lot of different types of plants. So they're incredibly complicated in terms of figuring out where they infest before they're in corn, because there could be a lot of different things. But their favorite's sweet corn. That's their number one favorite thing they like to eat. So the corn earworm is also, obviously, it's this stage of its life. It's when it's young. So I've just showed you the adult, but when it's a young caterpillar, it's in its feeding stage. It's starving. It's like a teenager. It needs to eat lots of Cokes and milkshakes to grow big and strong. And that's what's tunneling into that corn ear, and eventually ends up as a big, chunky worm. And it can even, that feeding damage can cause mold and food safety issues. And it's more than just having a caterpillar in the ear of that corn. in our area, dry Western Colorado, we don't have a lot of mold and fungus issues from the feeding damage, but in areas of the southeastern US, they do. It's a food safety issue at that point, having this caterpillar in your crop. So it's also why there's strict distributor thresholds on what's bought and then sold to the American public. But this is a major pest worldwide. This is not just something new. I have mentioned it has new genetics, but we've always fought the corn earworm here in Olathe, just like we have everywhere else. We've grown vegetable crops that it likes to eat. So tomatoes being one, cotton. We'll get into that. Corn being a real famous system for this pest. But corn's a heavily intensified managed system because of this pest. We have to spray corn a lot because this caterpillar, it enters the top of that corn ear as it's growing. And as those silks grow every day, there's a little bit of silk that's not protected, and they can end up getting in there. So very often this is a heavily sprayed system. It has an extensive host range, as I've mentioned, but it's on all kinds of things. Many malvaceous plants, corn being a favorite. I mentioned the sweet corn, but you'll find it in field corn. You'll find it in corn grown for seed. Find it in sorghum, lots of grains and cereals, peppers, tomatoes, soybeans, hemp, cannabis, cotton, you name it. It's quite diverse. It doesn't discriminate very much when it comes to host plants. It's one of the very few insects. Insects do have a formal naming system through the Entomological Society of America, and it's named 3 times, which they don't do very often in this very formal naming of an animal. This is all the same animal you're looking at. You're seeing it on different plants right now. On the left, you're seeing the corn, in the middle, tomato, and then cotton on the right side. But this is all the same animal. It's Helicoverpesea. It's in different crops, it's been named different things because it's so significantly damaging as an insect pest within that cropping system. So within corn, we call it the corn earworm. It's Helicoverpesea. It's the same thing, but in tomatoes, we call it the tomato fruit worm. It's Helicoverpesea. You get the point. In cotton bollworm. So it's so significant that it's important to have common names within these systems. I make a little bit of a joke about that in a moment, but you can see the damage done to developing corn ears on this slide, how they just munch straight through. That's not a marketable piece of produce anymore, unfortunately, is how distributors see that. So there's certain things, you can do tray packing of corn. You can cut the tops of those corn off, pack them behind plastic. They don't last as long. Growers want to really sell corn fully husked, on ice, on semis going all across the country, and it's different infrastructure to run tray packing. So some folks are moving in that direction. Some folks aren't. We don't have canneries in our area like we do on the East Coast. It's very common in corn growing regions. We have some canneries that a lot of this damaged corn could be going to, but it's just tricky. We don't have the infrastructure to deal with some of the pressure we're seeing from this pest in the Uncompahgre Valley. The little joke I was making about it being named 3 times is I compare this insect to the 3-headed dog in Greek mythology, Cerberus, the guardian of the underworld, because it's such a pain. And this is a kind of a fun little analogy playing at that. But the corn earworm, it has different ways that it looks. It has many different color forms. It's quite impressive to see that here. You can see that's all the same animal. So, I mean, it can really confuse producers. So we do a lot of work to, with our spray service and with our producers to make sure they're aware of this is all the same animal. It's all the same pest that you're fighting, even though it looks different. This variation in color is triggered by the genetics, but it's also by environmental factors. And this is the case for a lot of insects that don't all have one color, but it changes within one species, for example. And in corn earworm, it's both. It's their genetics that cause different colors, and it's also the environment. So it's all of it, all of the above. This pest is likely it's evolving to overwinter here at a higher latitude. But historically, in the system as it stands today, is this pest blows in and it migrates in. Once corn is planted, this time of year, they're planting corn. The last few weeks, they've probably been doing so. And the spring winds blow in either from, the Imperial Valley or Northwest Texas, or there's some region where south of us, there's a crop of moths that, are moved up with weather patterns to our area. And then as soon as our host plants are available, like their very favorite sweet corn, they're able to go in and they find those hosts and they immediately lay eggs on the silks. And slowly, they crawl down into that underneath the layers of the leaves that fold over that developing corn ear, and then they make a little home for themselves and they just eat to their little heart's content. And then they become a pupa and they pupate in the soil. I've found them pupating in the ears. It's more common that they drop to the ground and they pupate, and then they become this adult flying moth. They go and mate and lay eggs, and the cycle continues as all of these different cornfields across the entire region are successionally planted. They just move over to one that's at the perfect stage for them. And they can also hop into field corn that's patched around everything else too. So they have a very elaborate network of crops. They can hop, skip, and a jump all the way home. They just jump around this growing system and move in and out, causing a problem in multiple crops. Our region is not really considered a major corn growing region of the United States, but you can see out there Mesa and Montrose County. That's actually Delta and Montrose County. They're highlighted in this survey I took a photo of. We do have we're a minor crop area. We even make the national map. So historically, we have grown a lot of sweet corn here, and it's very important historically. Like grown in Olathe in Colorado, means something to Coloradoans and to consumers. Even across the nation, Olathe sweet corn, they've marketed it very well, similar to Palisade peaches. Folks know about it outside of our state, and it's because, yeah, it's dang good produce, but the marketing has been very strong in these growing regions. This Uncompahgre Valley is, these fertile soils that come off these alluvial fans out here in the high desert makes for good agriculture if you can move water to the site. And that's how these valleys were built. We have roller dams that divert water to agricultural parcels, and more so now the cities want water and ag is, fighting to keep it. It's an interesting conundrum. But these multi-generational farms exist very common out in this corn growing region in Western Colorado. The corn earworm is problematic because so little of it can exist within the crop before that whole field is just it's worthless to a grower because, if they go in and they do their survey before it's going to go to the packing shed and they find that there's some range in this, but not much, 6 to 10% infestation, that field will fail and will be rejected and will not be able to be sold at grade. So it's not a cash crop anymore to that producer. It's just, they take a massive hit. They're not able to make money on their crop, at least nearly as much. I'm not sure how the graded system even works below just the grade A, but I imagine they do what they can. But a lot of times that field gets abandoned and they're not going to pay labor to go in and pick what's good out of it. It's just going to sit there, and that continues to add to the problem of moths entering the environment. But this is a markability issue. Once this earworm enters the system, it causes an issue with selling that crop. But yeah, historically, we have a really strong sweet corn economy, even though we're a minor crop area. We have dwindling acreage now. Unfortunately, this is more historically, presenting on sweet corn in the Uncompahgre Valley. But it's famous, like I mentioned. It's known for its tenderness, its sweetness, and its vibrant flavors. They use heritage varieties only. They don't use GMOs here. They're just growing heritage varieties. It's also why the corn earworm loves what we grow out here so much. But it's a summertime staple across America. Sweet corn is a very American crop, and we love our sweet corn. But disaster pretty much hit mid 2000, maybe 2002, but it was 2023 that we had farmers literally calling the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture for help because they were so desperate for assistance, and there wasn't really folks there to help them. They wanted to have another set of eyes look at this system and like, why is this so different? Why across our whole region can't we sell corn? This is a pest we've had forever. We don't know what's changed. So it slowly became more of an issue that, management plays a part in all of this, but people really started to scratch their heads on just why was there this great loss for sweet corn producers? Why is this pressure so heavy? So folks started to really get together to start to try to answer these questions. Our major spray applicator service, CSU Extension, chemical companies, growers of the individual 3 packing sheds we have locally. But we were all wondering what gives? The spray timing, is it coverage? Is it the weather? Are they overwintering here now? And is it a new animal? We had no idea until we started to really look at the details. And one thing that came out of a specialty crop block grant I inherited, and it was an unfortunate discovery, but we had a bunch of larvae from collections that summer in 2023. And it was me and another individual pretty much had the same idea. We both sent larvae off for testing, for genetic testing. And we were like, can you tell us if this is the corn earworm? What is it if it's not? And we waited, patiently and anticipated results. And they did come back and, the USDA said, this is the corn earworm. And then a few months passed, and then I got an email, ... but. And what they discovered were, upon further testing, they found genes that didn't belong to the corn earworm within the corn earworm. So there was foreign genes. So there's been some type of introgression event, which means genetics from one species has entered a very similar species. And there's some advantage for those genes to enter that animal. So The corn earworm is the corn earworm out here in Olathe, but it's packing some new tools. So it has a new inserted part of its genome that's going to maybe make it. We're not sure how it will change its behavior. We can just document what we're seeing. But we wonder. At this point, it's really just wondering. We hypothesize that it could increase overwintering capacity. We do have data to support that it's changed the way that it lays eggs on the corn plant. It's not just laying eggs on silk. I have data for 2 years showing it's laying eggs all over the entire corn plant. Um, it's it's definitely a concern. We're also seeing multiple larvae per ear, which we don't normally see. We normally only see one because they're cannibalistic. So we're seeing some different behaviors, and the corn earworm we've been talking about so far is located off to the left here. And then its sister species, so the species that lives really throughout Asia, it's what I would say China probably spends the most money on insecticide control for, is the old world bollworm. So this unfortunately is the giver of the genetics to our local corn earworm moths. And these are global pests. I mean, you have to think of the whole biosphere and how weather works and how big moth species like these noctuid pests that are just, they occur in the trillions. I mean, and how all these moths mix around together and mate. I mean, it really is. You've got to take a step back from the cornfield and take a look at some of this. And I mean, we're just doing what we can to document this behavior. You know, we're seeing really early infestation into the corn plants in ways we haven't, you know, really documented well before, possibly. But we're wondering is, you know, why are they're not just eating silks and laying eggs on silks. I mean, this is a caterpillar that's in its fourth instar in the middle of June, which is early. I had to rip this open too. I mean, this tassel is not exposed. This hasn't even developed. I mean, this is an early stage of the corn plant. We're finding caterpillars in there, which is not on anyone's radar. So scouting programs have started to be prioritized by the corn board out here. They are doing more due diligence in their pest management space, but it's been slow. We're just doing what we can in extension to document new behaviors. So like I mentioned, this egg laying is fascinating. It's scary. It's not really what this pest is documented to do. But it is. That's the corn earworm laying an egg on the middle of a corn leaf, which typically it would only lay on a silk. I mean, silks on this plant won't exist for another week and a half or 2 weeks. So why is it laying an egg on this? I don't know, but we're documenting it. Like I mentioned, there's new behaviors. We're finding multiple per ear. This is an incredible challenge. This makes meeting grade even more challenging for growers. Typically, they're cannibalistic and they eat each other, and there's normally just one honking worm in there, and that's not the case this time. So, not every time, but more often than not, I'd say I don't have data to really say how frequent, but it's becoming more common that we encounter multiple larvae per year. So we're concerned about these new genetics because it's going to lead to new behaviors that ultimately equate to us having a harder time selling corn and these producers having a harder time when it's already a risk to invest into growing corn. This is already a pest they have an intensified management system for, and now we tell them that there's new genetics. I mean, I can tell you it's been incredibly challenging to communicate that to growers. It's not easy news to share when you've got bad news to share. And when you identify new foreign genes to the United States out of Olathe, Colorado here, that's a huge deal. They've now gone on to confirm this across the United States, and all, you know, kind of started out of the Olathe area. There was one paper in Texas that had found one moth, and besides that, they had never found a growing system to have these alleles present in a way that it exploded and caused, you know, damage to the agricultural economy. And unfortunately, that was documented in Olathe in 2023 for the first time. We're now partnering. I mean, we're working with people in the UK. I mean, I'm a very boots on the ground person on all this genetics work. I get wrapped into some of these pretty wild meetings, but these geneticists are having, frankly, it's a very interesting time for them to look at this genome of this moth as they do the science that they do. It's obviously pretty scary to look at how common these genes are. So in Iowa, for example, they randomly looked at field corn that was planted across the state, and they found about 46% of those moths that they tested had these genetics. So they've been there. When they looked at survivors of moths that were coming out of sweet corn fields that were sprayed with pyrethroids and they should be dying, but there's survivors. They looked at those survivors, 100% of them have the new genetics. So there's gone on to be a paper published that shows that pyrethroids, so the major class of chemicals used to kill these moths now with these new genetics, they become resistant to that group of chemical, or much more tolerant of it. So it's never a good thing when we have the transfer of genes that, provides an adaptive advantage, especially with an agricultural landscape, with a pest that's already a global pest. So this has sparked a massive research interest worldwide. I mean, we have people in the UK working on this. We have our national policy manager with USDA, Todd Gilligan, working on this. PPQ in Fort Collins is working on this. It's Mickey Eubanks's lab. My PhD advisor has definitely partnered with some of these folks. So it's a very interesting story from what we have found in the fields of corn here in Olathe, and just seeing how that information has traveled up to be this massive research collaborative effort to try to get more information about these moths. Even though it's not good news, it's information that we need to be discovering. I'll wrap up quickly. We did look at lures. So how do we look at how many moths are in the environment? We use tools to do so. We were looking at insect traps. I'll just share a little bit of data here. We looked at the whole region. I mean, this was a massive undertaking to look at who manufactures lures and what lure type, and we placed them across the whole growing region, and we just wanted to see how they performed. And it did split pretty differently. So luckily, what we've been using are the Sentry and the Sentry traps. I think historically, I mean, maybe recently we've switched to Trace A, but we will now use this to guide the traps that are used. So we gained some information out of it. We've looked at how larvae survive against chemicals that are used within these systems. And chemicals, when you get the full coverage and you use the high rate, which is not normally what happens in the field, but in the lab, when you really dose these larvae with chemical, they do die. I mean, even with the new genetics, we've shown this with some of our bioassay work. This will be work that's going into my PhD dissertation. But just looking at how these chemicals perform against the local corn earworm, it's been a challenge. We've had to raise a colony of corn earworm and keep them alive and do methodical testing on them, multiple generations down the line from what starts in the field. So it's not simple to be doing some of this work, but we're grateful to be doing it for our growers. We've done multiple years of this. This is just kind of showing some of that work that we do have some insensitivity to those pyrethroids. We're not seeing as many larvae die as we would expect. So our research this year is going to continue in a lot of ways that we've looked at bioassays. So looking at these different chemicals that are used, at what rates do larvae die. We're going to continue that work, but we're also running a really large field trial this year for my PhD work, looking at synergists. So if you can add a certain product to pyrethroids to make them more effective. I don't recommend the use of pyrethroids at all. I'm a little hesitant to participate in this trial just for that reason, because I don't want folks thinking pyrethroids are the answer. But if you add something to the pyrethroids and it ends up allowing them to work again, it would be massively helpful if it was going to help to kill larvae off. So we are going to participate in that trial with Iowa State this year. It's going to be it'll be interesting to see the outcome of that. But we'll also look at coverage this year. So how the chemical reaches the corn plant, using different ways of applying that chemical. So using a spray drone, using a tractor, and using an airplane. So we're going to set this trial up for the 2025 season. So it's not so sweet of a situation. I appreciate your listening ear. Haha, you get it. Sorry, I'm trying to make you laugh. But thank you for bearing with me in the middle of the day. I appreciate your time. And if you want to check this out, there are some resources in the news. CPR has done, Colorado Public Radio has done several segments on this out of our local station. And just know there's a big collaborative group of folks that are doing what they can. We have received federal emergency funding through work. Mickey Eubanks and Adrian Card, our specialty crops agent with Extension, have partnered to fund a grant and support growers in Western Colorado. But you can definitely buy some Olathe sweet corn this year and help growers out. Don't be surprised if or upset if there's a larvae in it. They're doing what they can, right? It's awesome they're moving food to our plates. So just want to thank Mickey, my PhD advisor. He's been an awesome collaborator. I'm looking forward to working with him into the years to come on the corn earworm and other projects as well. But I thank you for your time and listening here today.
Well, so we have two questions in the Q&A box.
Okay.
The first question is, do you sell prints on Etsy or anything like that?
I'm not organized enough to do that yet, but one day it's a goal actually to launch my website this year. So keep me in mind that I'm I'm pretty busy having taken on a PhD. It's my limiting factor to starting a website and doing Etsy, but that's the goal. So eventually, sorry that it's not a manifested dream yet, but it's on its way. Thank you for your interest.
That's great. And then the second question is, are there any suitable practices for managing corn earworm in a small private garden?
Yeah, so you could look for eggs. I mean, like we scout for eggs in corn and you could try to destroy them, but the real truth of it is just completely excluding moths from laying eggs on those plants if you have means to. I have seen people go to extreme measures to do this. So, netting, fine mesh netting over plants, building a space where those corn plants, at least during that critical time where eggs are being laid, you could exclude those. I mean, it's not really practical to cover corn. I mean, I'm not going to be able to sell that even if I try, but it's true that if you could completely exclude them, that would be great. You can use several products. There are insecticides that work. It's just this intensified system. So some folks don't want to be applying insecticides at all. They are tools. When they're applied safely and you read the label, they can go a long way. But some folks don't want to deal with that in a home garden. You likely are going to need to be doing some type of intervention though. So it's not cut and dry, really. I would say utilizing insecticides is the default. We don't really have great natural biocontrols. We have some natural enemies. You could always encourage, maybe by planting flowers around your corn bed, you could have some minute pirate bugs coming in and hopefully predating on those insect eggs. But unless you find them, a chemical finds them, or a predator finds them, they're going to exist on that corn plant. And pretty soon they're going to bury themselves down within that corn ear and they're not going to be accessible to you. In a home garden space, I mean, you need enough corn to pollinate that corn. So it's like, I don't know how many rows you can get away with. But you have to have obviously a pretty significant block. I would say like some of the spinosad-based products, that's the new mode of action. This is derived from soil bacteria. These are great sprays, and they're soft chemicals for the most part. They're not the historical organophosphates, carbamates. They're not the pyrethroids. They're not synthetic, really. They're derived from soil bacteria. So it's pretty sweet, in my opinion, to be able to use that as a tool to fight this biology. So I would encourage insecticide use if you want clean corn, or plant enough corn that there's some for you and some for them, because they're going to find it. It's their favorite host. So you're not going to avoid it by just hoping. But there's a few ideas there. I do hope to build a corn earworm fact sheet this year. It's on the list. So there's more information to help answer questions just like that for folks that are on small acreage. But yeah, thanks for your time and questions.
Yes, thank you, Mel, for that explanation. And please complete the survey. We would like to hear what is working and what we could improve. You can take a picture of the QR code, or we left the link in the chat. We'll hope to see you next week with vegetable diseases and pests. Otherwise, have a good rest of your day and a good week. Bye, everybody.